I've appreciated the opportunity to be the program chairman for this month and hope you continue to remember the information given by those persons as well as the information today. Now, one of my favorite friends in Kiwanis is Wes Love. And I didn't know much about him except those 200 marathons that he ran. And then I learned there was a lot more, and I even learned things today. You're going to learn things in the program about maybe Mr. Kiwanian of our club. Anyone who's been a lieutenant governor twice and gone to 10 consecutive international conventions. I don't think anyone else in our club meets that. He said, I'm going to talk up to the marathons. I said, you're going to mention a little bit about them? He says, no, I've already given a program in Kiwanis about that. So, the Real Wes Love is my program today by Wes himself. I'm going to put it on your tie. How would that be?
And then let me know if it's coming through.
I will let you know because we're not going to miss any of this.
Okay.
Is he coming through? Say something, Wes.
Yeah. I'm not used to these mics, but you got to let me know. I'm behind the mic, so I don't know what I...
Yep, you're on.
Good. All right. I was sort of railroaded into this meeting. I don't know, it happened 6 or 7 weeks ago. But I had a little bit of fun putting it all together, so I'll share with you the title, The Real Wes Love. And I will honor Camilla back there with the bio. I'll start this out with a 3-minute, 4-minute bio. She begged me for it, and I turned her down. But I think that's a good way to get started, and then I can hit some highlights of the different things that I went through. So, I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in July 7th, 1934. My dad, Merle M. Love, and my mother, Arlene Warnock Love. I sort of consider myself a rebel and a street kid. And those are pretty harsh terms. The street kid was one that was, from the age 10 or so, was always out there making money. I didn't really need the money, but I mean, it was just my thing. So, street kid, it wasn't one that was smoking cigarettes and causing problems on the street. And the rebel, I sort of did what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it, all through life. Sometimes it got me into hot water, but most of the time it didn't. All right, said I was born in Philadelphia. In 1935, we moved to the Pittsburgh area. I went to kindergarten and started my roaming, neighbors and then the next neighbor and the next neighbor and so forth till I was quite a ways away. In 1940 we moved to West Alexander, Pennsylvania. I call it deepest Appalachia, 1 mile from the West Virginia line in the Appalachians. On old US 40, that's National Road, 1938 they put a bypass, but old US 30 went about 10 yards from the front door. And that was our playground for the years that we were there. We were there six years. I went to school there, started the school in 6 years of education.
It turned off.
Am I not coming through? You're not coming through. What's happening?
The battery died.
We're going to give you mouse.
Okay. And then I was told in, I think, August or so of 46 that we were moving when we moved to West Lafayette, Indiana, and that was a big culture shock from Appalachia to West Lafayette. Well, I went to the 7th through 12th grade, graduated in 1952. In 52, 53, I went to Bemidji State Teachers College in Bemidji, Minnesota. Told Mother, guess where I'm going to college? She came home. I was going to the Navy. I was going to not go to Purdue and everything. And all of a sudden, in a sports magazine, I saw something about Bemidji State Teachers College, and I went. All right, 53 to 55, I went back to West Lafayette, went to Purdue, majored in physical education. Why? Because I heard it was the easiest course on campus. In March of 1955, I joined the United States Army and was sent to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. I called it Fort Lost in the Wood. And basically for me it was. I was there 4 weeks in basic training, and I contracted pneumonia, and I spent 9 months in 3 military hospitals, and so most of my Army time was taken up there. I'll talk more about that later. In March of '56, there I was back at Fort Leonard Wood to take basic training again. In May of '56, they sent me to Fort Knox, Kentucky for radio school, the old obsolete Angry Nines. They were obsolete then and they're obsolete now, I'm sure. And in an MP unit, and sort of wasted my time or carried on my time till I got out in January of '57 and entered Purdue to finish up my year and a half that was left. But on April or May of '59, I took a 2-month teaching job. Only 2 months. The teacher had a heart attack. And it was up at Eden, Ohio. It's right on the Indiana line, just north of Fort Wayne. And in the summer of '59, I entered the University of Michigan on a full scholarship to take physical therapy. Well, the summer session went all right, but the fall semester, October, I walked away. I'm not too sure why. It was probably a woman, and we'll talk more about that. October of '49, I took a teaching job near Chillicothe, Ohio. Immediately after walking away, within 48 hours, I had this job with the help of a past superintendent, and was down in the Chillicothe area, just outside of Chillicothe, for 2 years with 7th grade students. Tell you more about that too. In the summer of '61, I entered the Mayo Clinic for physical therapy. Couldn't stay away from physical therapy. And in April of '63, I was suddenly terminated. I'm not too sure why, but I'll tell you more about that in a little while. In September of '63, I went to Winnipeg, Canada, and walked into the administration building up there on September 2nd, told them I was an American and I wanted to teach. And they had 2 things open: permanent sub, I could be farmed out every day and I always got paid, or special education. I knew nothing about special education, but I took the job. Had the 15 and 16-year-olds, I think. All right. On May the 18th, which is Queen Victoria's birthday in the United Kingdom, it's even in our calendars here today. It's a holiday up there, and I met the love of my life, Rebecca Carino, in a 3-month whirlwind romance, and I married her on, Jeff, check me on this, August 27th. His is the 17th. So as soon as we got married, I told her I got to go back to Purdue and work on a master's degree, so she came with me. She worked at St. E. as a nurse, and I was doing my master's in physical education. In June of '65, the 2 of us went up to Harvey, Illinois, and all in one day, one morning, we got a job and also found a house. And standing on the walk outside the house, I said to her, do we go home or do we go to a ball game? She says, let's go see the Cubs. Right down my alley. All right, then Jeffrey came along in April 6, 1966. Okay, that's all for the bio. Let me go through and get few of the highlights here in several of those categories. The early years, Pittsburgh area, kindergarten, and beginning the roaming of the neighborhoods. In West Alexander, the sledding, there was plenty of snow and plenty of hills. So the Love boys could sled till 9 o'clock at night, and we did plenty of that. And in the summertime, it was July and August, it was blackberry picking. And again, the Love boys did that. I don't know if the other kids did or not. In 46, we were able to, the three brothers were able to pick enough berries to sell and buy a ticket on the bus to Washington, D.C. Mother went with us, and we stayed at an aunt's and had a very nice month of August vacation. For West Lafayette schools, I worked very hard in the school. I wanted to be on top. That was kind of a game with me, and I was in West Alexander. I could do that in West Lafayette. In fact, the first day I came into class, and Mrs. Gowdy, social studies teacher, said, well, we're having our 6-week exam. If you want to go over and sit and wait, and you can start tomorrow. Or you can take a copy of the test. And I did. And I aced the test. It happened to be the same thing we were talking about 400 miles away, but that made me feel pretty good. All right, the National Honor Society was a big thing with me. I really wanted to be on the National Honor Society. I qualified. There was 20 that qualified. I was somewhere around 12th or 13th, but when they voted, I didn't get it. And I had heard there was more to the National Honor Society than grades. And I quickly joined a bunch of clubs my senior year, but I never went to the meetings. So I could understand why I did not make this. However, I was feeling kind of bad that day, and after school, and I was walking the upstairs hallway just thinking, and the door opened, and who should call me but Bella Calder, the Latin teacher, the oldest teacher in the school. And she had me come in and sit down, and she said, I want you to know that we voted for the National Honor Society. And Wes, I voted for you. And I thanked her, but she said, you didn't make it. And I said, well, I already heard that. But I thought it was really nice of a teacher she was the oldest teacher there, and to actually feel that way for me. I thought that was great. And the other thing that when I met, with the National Honor Society, I have talked with many, many, many people, teachers and many friends, and I often hear, well, I was on the National Honor Society. You made the National Honor Society? I understand there's all kinds of schools, large, small. Muncie Central was 4,000, and some was few. So every school has a National Honor Society. All right, learning about Pete, Brother Pete. This was a great shock to me. In 1947, I came to dinner when it was in May or June, and I said to Mom, where's Pete? He went away. Well, where did he go? Haven't seen him all day. He didn't say goodbye. He went to Philadelphia. I was totally puzzled. Nothing more was said. And later that summer, we took a train to Philadelphia to see him, and she was going to put him in a private school, and she called us together, my other brother, Bill, and she said, I want you two to sit down with me. And we were running through the train just like any kids would be, causing no problem. So we sat down beside her, and she said, I want to talk to you about Pete. And she made the statement, Pete is not your real brother. That blew me away. Like, what is he, my sister? I could not believe this. Well, then she went on to explain that my dad was married to another lady years before. Pete was 4 years older than I was. And his mother died a few months after he was born. And of course, he was taken care of by his grandmother, which is my grandmother, which is my dad's mother, while my dad was on the road. And when he met my mother, why then Pete visited, and my mother said it was only supposed to be visits, but it turned out to be permanent. He finally came into the family. So as far as I knew, he was my brother until that point. And it really destroyed Pete too, because he told me a few years ago, he says, you know, I think I'm the only kid that had two mothers, one that died before I even knew her, and another that didn't like me. Well, Mom liked him, but it totally destroyed him, with what I just shared with you. Okay, Bemidji State Teachers College, what happened there? Well, I majored in PE, and I lived with a family. I didn't live in the dorm, but I lived with a family that were hunters. They did a lot of fishing, and they took me up to Red Lake, and they took me out ice fishing on the lake. And so I enjoyed my year there and one summer session, but I came home and went to Purdue. And I've listed here Purdue 53, 55. That was the first 3 semesters, and 57, 58, that was the second 3 semesters, and 64, 65, that was the master's degree. I want to recognize it, or give a little recognition to a few faculty members there that really, really helped me. Pert Parker, many of you know Pert, he's a member right here, and Tony Anarino. They were no-nonsense instructors, and that's the kind of person I needed. And I learned great from them. George Hannaford was in charge of intramurals, and he pulled me aside and said I could be his intramural manager, and I could get the same awards as the varsity athletes, and I did. I got the leather jacket, the pumpkin leather jacket, and the pea blanket. I did not get the pea sweater because I was 1 year in Bemidji. And Dr. Ishmael was really, really important to me. There was a real no-nonsense individual. And I guess he was, from Egypt, I believe, right. And he was in a couple of Olympics. Yep. And he told me, when I took the master's, he was kind of in charge of me there, and he told me when we finished and sat down with me, and he said that the 2 people from speech and education, the other 2 sites parts of the master's, did not recommend further education beyond what we just did. But he looked at me and he says, "Love, I'll take you on, and between the 2 of us, we can come up with a very nice degree in 2 years." And I knew some of his guys that were working with him, and I appreciated that, but I told him, Dr. Ishmael, I've got to turn you down on that. I'm a teacher now, and it's time for me to get out and teach kids. What would I do with a PhD in physical education? So, the United States Army, well, that was kind of a downer for me. Like I said, I spent 9 months in an Army hospital, and that, just say a moment or so about I avoided going on sick call as long as I could. Probably should have gone long before. But the day that I did go in, I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning, standing under a cold shower. I have no idea how I got there from my bunk clear at the other end. But I guess the temperature was so high that I guess I needed something cold, because when I woke up, here was all this water coming down, ice cold water. I went on sick call. They lost me 3 times on the way, put me in a big hall, and were calling patients one at a time, and some colonel come by, I think he was a doctor probably, put a thermometer in my mouth, and 2 or 3 minutes later he was so excited to get me out of there and get a wheelchair, and I heard the temperature was 108, and the Red Cross called my mother and told her about this, and she said, well, she'd take a train the next day, and they told her, Mrs. Love, there may be no next day. We're here to get you on a train tonight. And they did. And she came out. And so the first 2 or 3 weeks were very, very bad. I don't remember too much. 16 penicillin shots a day to start with, and they dwindled down. And an oxygen tent, and I don't know what else. But I could stay 90 days in Fort Leonard Wood, and then they sent me to Great Lakes, which was a mistake. That was for the Navy, so I stayed 3 weeks. And then they sent me to Fitzsimmons Army Hospital in Denver. That happened to be the same time when President Eisenhower was out there with his heart attack in '55. And it was kind of neat to sit outside and look up at the 8th floor, and when he was able to sit up, why he'd wave to the people down below. All right, Winnipeg. I mentioned that that's where I met Rebecca on May the 18th, and that was kind of I did teach there, but I told you that before. Jeff's birth, that's kind of a highlight here. He was born on April 6, 1966, and that morning we woke up and early in the morning, and she looked at me and she says, "I'm having the baby today." And I says, "What makes you think you're having it today?" Well, she said, "The water bag broke." And I says, "Isn't that when we're supposed to put the things in the pack and rush off to the hospital?" "No," she says, "I know what I'm doing. I've delivered over 100 babies by myself, and I know what I'm doing." And I said, "You're just going to stay here?" And she said, "Go on to school, then I'll have lunch ready." And I came back. I said, "What have you been doing all morning?" "I've been walking up and down the house here. That's what I'm supposed to do." And I said, "You're not going yet?" "No." I said, "Remember, this kid is part mine." He says, "I'll go when I get ready." So I asked the principal if I could have get out 30 minutes early, and he wondered why. And when I told him my wife's having I didn't even get the word baby out, he got so excited. Go, go, he pushed me out the door. So I went, and she was at a risk. She was 41 years old, and she had had endometriosis, and I'm not sure what that is, something about they scraped the uterus or something years before. And she was only 96 pounds without him. And there's no way that he was going to get through that birth canal, so she'd have to have a cesarean. So it was a bit of a risk. So she had it later that evening, and they kept her a week, and every day she said, she wanted me to name the baby. And I said, "Yeah, I'll get something." And 5 days went by, and it was very embarrassing. She said they called it Baby Love, and she said, "It has to have a name." And so about the 5th or 6th day I came in, and "I've got a name." And "What's the name?" "Jeffrey." "Oh, that's a nice name," she said. "Where did you get that name?" Open mouth, insert foot. I told her, I had a girlfriend a few years ago. And her mother had 2 babies late in life after the first 3. And she named one Jeffrey, and she named the other one Jay or Jason. And I think that name Jeffrey was pretty good. And she looked straight at me and she said, "You named our baby after your girlfriend's brother?" And I never heard the end of that. All I had to do is keep quiet. No, I have to talk. Okay, I have 3 hobbies, running, and the running is done. I've told you all about that. One of the other hobbies is hooking rugs, and I'm going to put this one out or hold it up for you anyway in a few moments. And I have, I probably hadn't read 3 books in my whole life until '07. I started quite a few, but never finished them. Typical of me, never finished. Maybe that's why I ran all those marathons. I never failed on 200 marathons, so I kind of corrected that never finishing. But anyway, I was sitting by a lady on an airplane, and we shared a few words, and she says, "Is that all you ever read, is that old sport magazine?" And I was stunned. I just said yes and no more. When I got home, within the next week, I said to myself, I'm going to read. I have now 1,400 books of my own. I don't know what I'm going to do with them if I have to leave the house. I'll leave that up to Jeff. And I've read over 300 of them all the way through, never stopped. So I'm kind of pleased with myself that I have these 3 hobbies. And let me recite a poem here, a very short one, that I left it over there, so I hope I can remember it. It was in my room for many years on a little frame, and I sang it out in the berry patch where I could scream and nobody could hear me. And it goes like this: all to myself I think of you, not you, but the past. Think of the things we used to do. Think of the things we used to say. Think of each olden, golden yesterday. Sometimes I sigh, and sometimes I smile, but I hold each olden, golden while, all to myself. I don't know about the time.
You're doing fine. You've got 10 minutes.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, my gosh. I knew
I'm
that.
afraid I was going to. Okay, well, you got me for a few more minutes. I have a nickname. I should have, that came along at age 4, and we were in the Pittsburgh area, and all the kids in the neighborhood, of course, I don't hardly remember them, but they made a pact that they would call each other by the letter of their last name. And so my brother Pete was L, and Jane Austen next door was A, and so forth. And then I came along. Well, we couldn't have 2 L's, so they named me W. Well, that was a little too hard to say, and quickly they shortened that to Dub. And that's been with me all my life. My wife called me that, my mother called me that. Some teachers at West Side, when they signed my annual, Dear Dub, really to show you that they're part of, I'm part of them and so forth. And when my mother was down at Wesley Manor in Frankfurt, 1 week before she died, I went down to see her and walked up and, do you know who this is? And she just shook her head. And I said again, you sure you don't know who? No, she just shook her head. The third time she looked up, she said, looks like Dub. And I said, it is Dub. And we had a real nice 2 hours. We took a walk, real nice day. And she said to me that day, she says, you know, Dub, I don't remember what I named you. Yeah. And I told her, that's okay, Mom. The real name wasn't a favorite of mine either. And really, Mom and Dad didn't even know about that. Each of them thought that their father had Wesley in the name. Dad's was Charles William, and they thought it was Wesley. And my mother's dad was Oscar W. Warnock, and the W didn't stand for anything. So when they named me Wesley, they thought they were really naming it after their father, and it wasn't. So I guess Wesley's a good Methodist name, right?
Right, right.
All right. Let me see here. I think I've got, I'll give you a couple examples of the rebel. I mean, lots of things I rebelled with. Just, it didn't cost anything or didn't hurt too many people. But one of them was in Mrs. Gowdy's social studies in 7th and 8th grade, and she wanted us to have a notebook, and it was going to be part of our grade, and there was no way I could do this. I went to her, told her, I can't do this, Mrs. Gowdy. She says, well, it's part of your grade. I don't care, really. I just can't do this. And I rebelled, and I got a B every 6 weeks, so it didn't make too much difference. And when I was teaching, and some of you know that lesson plans are essential. There was no way I was going to do lesson plans for the 33 years that I taught. So I rebelled there, and I just told the principals that you can come in my room anytime. I have a topic. It's not one that I created this morning. It's one that I follow right through. And you'll see my kids always seated. You'll never see me sitting down. I'm always standing up and moving in the class. You can even take they threatened to take the teachers' chairs. They didn't want them sitting around. I never sat down ever. Maybe it was, to have lunch or something, but the kids weren't in the room. So I had control of my students. I had a topic that followed through the curriculum. So lesson plans just were not my thing, and I sort of got away with that. And I did. Got another minute?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I did walk away. I did walk away from my teaching in Chillicothe in '91. It got so bad, and that was the ghetto. They had 800 kids in one building, and they were all ghetto children, low income children that come out of the Chicago suburbs. And I walked away, and I went over to the superintendent and told him I quit. She said, well, you have to have something in writing. And give me a piece of paper, and I wrote a sentence, and I said, well, that sufficed. And I walked out. And I stayed out of almost 3 weeks, and who should come to my door? Well, this guy doesn't mean much to you, but Reg Weaver, and he had taught, and we'd coached each other, but then he got out of teaching, and he became the president of the National Education Association. And then he was back to school, and he knocked at my door, And I said, what are you here for, Reg? And we had our differences. He said, I want to talk to you. And come in. I said, what about schools? I don't care about them over there. I care about you. The superintendent probably sent him over. But anyway, by talking to me and made me feel important, I finally called the superintendent and told her I was coming back. And she pulled out the little note. And she says, you know, I never took this to the board. She says, I knew you were coming back. But it did get very, very, very tough in the schools. My buddy and I, we took spring break for 13 years in a row. We took 3 times to Hawaii, 3 times to Mexico, 3 times to Florida, 2 times to Puerto Rico, once to Aruba, and once to the Caymans. And that was a welcome break from the teaching in that particular area. And I have nothing more to say. I don't think so. If you have any questions, why? And we got a minute or so, that's okay.
Oh, you're going to show the...
Well, I'm going to put some pictures over here, and if you want to walk over and take a look at them, they're in frames. I don't have this technology to put them up here like some of them do. And I will hold up the rug that I'm making for the twins.
Oh, yeah, you can walk away with that.
I got it.
Okay, you got it.
I got it.
I don't know if we can get this. It's rolled up at the bottom, but
Oh, is that natural?
and I haven't done too much. It's a quarter of it done, so.
Yeah. Well,
All right, down at the bottom here, they have the name, and you can see John. You can see the devils at the corners up here at the top and the bottom. The WL in the middle, west side on the right and the left, and the RDP up at the top, the Red Devil pride chant that they echo out. So one for John and one for Jessica. 163,000 pieces of yarn I had to cut. Used to be pre-cut, but to cut 163,000, that's going to take me well into 16, and then to insert 2 into each of these little holes. So I'll be probably well into the middle of 16. The kids know about this, and they're quite excited about it. So, they all got it, right?
Yeah, they did, yeah.
well, that is the Real Wes Love. And he has living proof that it's not finished. The Real Wes Love is not finished. Thank you, guys, and Wes, for the program today. Special.